I don't care about the IQ or the certificates from. It's the journey and the process, and it's the wisdom that you pick along. Wisdom is totally different from intellect. Wisdom allows you to sit and philosophically self-reflect and also be critical of yourself, right? And then make decisions.
Mm-hmm.
Intelligence is just knowledge you have and how you utilize it. So the wisdom is, I think, the journey has made, and then that wisdom has to come from within. Not, by the way, it's not bad if you come from a very wealthy family and a good family, and they have helped you. It's great, and it gives you a leg up, and you should use that leverage and do as much as you can.
Dr. Pradeep, welcome to Quit and Switch. How are you feeling today?
I feel great. I'm very excited because I think this is kind of the podcast I look forward to, and this kind of audience I want to reach out to.
Excellent, excellent. Well, you're very welcome. So just for the Quit and Switchers listening out there, for today's show notes, please head over to www.quitandswitch.co/Pradeep. That's quitandswitch.co/Pradeep. We'll also have the links in the description below, whether you're listening on YouTube or watching on YouTube or you're listening on the podcast players. All right. All right. So let's get straight into it. So just a quick elevated pitch about Dr. Pradeep. So he is the CEO of Donsfield. He's also a serial dropout. He got his PhD from Oxford University. He also has dropped out from the prestigious Harvard University. And he's also the author of 99 Trillion Helpers to Improve Your Gut Health. We will talk about the book a little bit more. And then also, he's a speaker as well. So, Dr. Pradeep, once again, welcome to the show. How are you feeling?
Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm feeling good. I'm excited to share my story. This is what I do on a free part-time basis. I want to reach out to as many people as I can and say, you know what, this is guy, a bald-headed beard guy from Northwest London, who's done all this, and I want people to say, hey, I can do better, and I want people to do better, particularly kids.
I love that. I love that. I mean, that just brings me joy. That just makes me sound so excited for you to say that. We just have to give you a little bit of cheer for that, Dr. Pradeep. But yeah, well done to you. So yeah, going on, continuing on. So let's go straight into the show. All right. So if you were in an Uber ride with me right now, Pradeep, and we only had maybe 30 seconds together, how would you describe your 30 seconds, maybe a few minutes? How would you describe your transition from being a serial dropout to where you are where you are today, to turning over lots of revenue in your current business?
Failure, one word, failure and rejection. Those are
Mm,
two words I describe it. I don't
mm.
need 30 seconds. So it's just poking the system, and understanding people from Northwest London hood to all the way to royalty, dining with them sometimes, and understanding this world. And it all takes failure and rejection and getting it done.
Failure. So failure is the catalyst for where you are today.
Absolutely. I always say to the kids and mentees, anyone on the podcast, I don't believe in life there's a set goal that you go for. I think life is all about how big the next failure can be, right? So at this position,
Mm,
I cannot make $100 million failure. I can make a 10 million or $5 million failure, but can I one day be in a position where I can make $100 million failure? Can a kid come to me and goes, "Hey, I heard your story. Can you give me 50 million for this?" Can I give it to him and say, "Hey, go do it, kid"? That's what life's about. How much bigger failures and risk I can take as I grow.
that's very interesting. Some people will think that's counterintuitive, Dr. Pradeep, because some people think, oh, failure is going backwards. But actually, there's a quote that says, fail fast, fail forward, right?
Yeah, yeah. People. I totally agree. There's a equation. People say risk equals reward. I say, cut it out. I say risk plus speed equals reward plus confidence. So the quicker you take the risk at
Mm,
speed, you'll get rewards. But when you fail, you get confidence. So it's kind of a loop back. The more
true.
confidence, the more risk and failure you take.
True, and I think that's a great way to put it, because you can apply this logic in so many different scenarios. For example, you're learning to ride a bike. You know, you're off the training wheels, and you're on your bike. You keep falling down, you keep falling down. Eventually, you get on it, and eventually you don't fall, and eventually you end up riding. So the quicker you learn how to fall off your bike, the quicker you can stay in your bike. That's a fantastic analogy, Dr. Pradeep.
Yeah,
All
yeah,
right,
and I
so I think
like
this
that
is
as
a great
well.
segue. So let's talk about. Mm, Did you want to add to that?
Yeah, eventually when you ride a small bike, you get to a bigger bike, you get confidence, and eventually someone might come along and push you down. You're like, oh, you can push me down. I just get another bike and start riding again. So the first failure is always the catalyst.
Mm, mm, excellent. All right, so I think this is a perfect segue, Pradeep, to talk about some of your failures. So you're a serial dropout. You've dropped out from Harvard University, as an example. Let's talk about what happened there, and what led you to drop out of those universities.
Yeah, so I have to correct you. I finished my Fulbright fellowship at Harvard, but then I dropped out of
Hmm.
academia and everything else. So if I can quickly tell you quickly about my four dropouts in life. Um, my mum actually smuggled me on a fake passport to the UK. Were war refugees because my family was actually on a list, so she's a very independent, strong woman. We settled in a council estate called Chalk Hill, northwest London, notorious in the 80s and 90s for drug manufacturing. So I was around with gangsters and
Mm,
people that I had to learn to fight, and no one went to university or had an education. So I dropped out of high school at 16 with one C in English speaking. Can you believe it? That's the only thing I use now. And the rest I did it. And I was working bars and clubs, Tesco's, Clark's shoe shop. And 16 to 21, I was learning sales. I was weightlifting. I loved weightlifting, gave me discipline. At 21, I got into a serious fight in a gang fight. I got hit on the head. I was in a coma for 4 hours. I didn't see God or anyone special. I woke up and I said, hey, I need to change my life. So I made some phone
wow.
calls. I made three phone calls. Westminster University accepted me, Polytech University. Got a scholarship after that, done well at Imperial College. Then I got a scholarship for a PhD in Oxford. So from one GCSE C dropout, I went to Oxford in 5 years. And then at Oxford, I won prizes doing so well. And I told my professors I need some money. How much do you need, kid? At 300 million, I got three drugs. They said no one asked that kind of money. But you understand that I worked out at 27, quit and switch, right? That this system is wrong. Because if I can go from no GCSE to Oxford and Harvard with straight hustle, EQ, and a bit of IQ, and a bit of SQ, which I call spiritual intelligence, right? Then I can actually do a
Mm,
dream bigger. So I said, okay, fine. So I was broke at 27. I didn't care what other people were doing in their careers. I wrote for my own fellowships. I went to Harvard. I went to Sorbonne in Paris and Hebrew University in Israel. And I came back and I said, I have all these universities now, all these techniques, 18 months, dead broke, but, done it all. Look at my CV. One, first time in history, 2017, I was the British, European, and American scientist. I discovered a drug already. Can I have my money now? They're like, nope. So then I quit and I dropped out. My second dropout from the academic system. Said, forget academia.
yeah.
Then I made in the West. Then I made 272 phone calls. The bigger the dream, the more phone calls you have to make, kids. So I went into China.
Mm,
No Chinese, nothing landed in.
mm.
28, they gave me a lab, some money. All my professors in the West told me it takes 30 years, Adrian, to discover those drugs. I done it in 18 months with my people and money in China.
No,
So we published the drugs, and I
no.
said, this is amazing. I was a associate professor by 28, 29. I was in China, and then someone came up to me and goes, hey, you're quite talented. Do you want to do the research but do some business as well in biotech? I had no idea what business
Mhm.
development was, didn't understand profit and loss, EBITDA, what a margin was. I had no idea, right? Margin for me was a column at a piece of paper, a margin, right? I didn't know what net margin was, profit margin. I I had no idea. Northwest London, and I said, okay. Always say yes and then say no. Always say yes, then say no. And then I started doing business development, and I worked out a way to make a lot of money through acquisitions. So we brought companies. The company grew by 80%. I made a name for myself. By 31, 30, I was vice president of business development. So I dropped out, third dropout now from associate professor now into business, doing those things, having living life well. By the way, I was introduced to something called money, and money is a very good tool. By the way, it's not bad as people say. And then I learned the value of money, finance. I was 30 or 31. I had a private jet and a chauffeur that the corporate gave me, not my own. So I can fly off to do deals. And I was like, what the hell am I doing from Northwest London on a private jet? But then I went into business mode. I was doing acquisition, saved a lot of time, and I came back and I was pinching myself. Then the pandemic hit. Very hard to live in China. It's a great place, but it was hard for foreigners. So my fourth dropout, guys, hang in there.
Mm.
They told me all
Fourth,
foreigners
wow.
all foreigners go to this hotel. I turn up to this hotel, and I was the only foreigner left in Suzhou. I'm like, where all the foreigners go? And I was just waiting, and I was like, what's going on here, right?
Hmm.
And then it was just me and all these big Chinese men with cigars. I'm like, how the hell do you guys get out? So I went to them. I'm very social with my Microsoft Translator app. I'm like, hey, how did you get out? They're like, we own factories. We own the city. We can do what we want. I'm like, what do you guys do? And then we are an association of business factory owners, and we all sell online. I'm like, oh, I
Mm.
do corporate business development. I love numbers now because now I know what a margin is. Can I check your numbers out? And they're like, okay, give it to this. I'm like, 400,000 a day, 200% ROI, Adrian, selling boring products like
Wow.
pencils, spoons, fans, toys. I'm like, I need to get in this hustle, right? They're like, nope. Exact same thing. Getting into Oxford, getting into Harvard. Kept hearing no. So this is what I done. In the morning, I done my R&D and
Mm.
vice president job. At night, I was there
Yeah.
translating Amazon customer case reports so I can win these guys over because I knew English, right? That's the only way I can win them over. And that's how I got into the game of e-commerce. And eventually one of the factory owners said,
Mm.
you can sell my toys. Sold those toys, doing a bit of hustling, was doing very well. Still didn't know what e-commerce was fully, but I was learning and I was still doing my day job. Then it was time for me to come back to the UK, and I said, "Hey, I'm back. Look at my CV now. 32, conquered the world. Can I have the same VP position?" Now they said, "Hey, it's a fantastic CV, kid, but now you're too young and overqualified. All our vice presidents are 40s and 50s, right?" I couldn't argue anymore.
Man.
So my fourth dropout. I've done it all. I won my awards, got my education from Oxford and Harvard. I got no ego here. By the way, you got to separate ego from
Hmm.
identity when you quit and switch and quit
Mm.
position. I said, okay, fourth dropout, concentrate on the business. Now we're doing very well. 3 years as CEO, my own founding business. We're launching brands. We're now acquiring our own companies. From Northwest London, I'm buying companies, and we're consulting as well. So that's my life. It's just been full of failures, rejections, going to the top, going to the bottom, and quitting and switching and dropping out 4 times.
Fantastic. Wow. What a roller coaster of a journey, Pradeep. Thank you for sharing your story. Comas, serial academic dropouts. But the theme here is not giving up even when failure is at your door. This is the theme here, quit and switches, if you're listening, is to keep going, keep pivoting, keep trying different things until you get that yes. And when that yes comes, that's it. Move on to the next thing. This is such a powerful, powerful story. Wow, I am so blown away. Honestly, there's so many takeaways in that, and I hope everyone was paying attention. So Pradeep, let's move on. So, could you tell us a little bit more about Donsfield? So your focus mainly is e-commerce, right?
Yeah, so I set up the company knowing that this is what I love. I love business now. I love
Hmm.
building things, and I think it's the business the hardest thing ever. I've been an IQ professor, right? Business it takes a lot
Mm.
more. So I built the company to launch our own products online. We buy our own companies now, which are also selling online, and we consult for some manufacturers that want to sell online. So Donsfield at the moment has those three verticals, but we're really concentrating now to buy companies because I say to everyone, I've learned so far that the quickest way to make money is to buy money.
Mm. Mm. OPM?
OPM, other people's money when you
OPM?
use it.
Are we talking about OPM? There you
Yes. So
go.
when you acquire a company, use OPM and use little as your own money, but use the cash flow as leverage.
Mm. Powerful stuff. Powerful stuff, man. Powerful stuff. Would you say that you where you are today that you wouldn't have got there without all of the serial failures that you've gone through, Dr. Pradeep?
Absolutely. It's a lesson, and also I don't care about the IQ or the certificates from. It's the journey and the process, and it's the wisdom that you pick along. Wisdom is totally different from intellect. Wisdom allows you to sit and philosophically self-reflect and also be critical of yourself, right? And then make
Hmm.
decisions. Intelligence is just knowledge you have and how you utilize it. So the wisdom is, I think, the journey has made, and then that wisdom has to come from within. Not, by the way, it's not bad if you come from a very wealthy family and a good family, and they have helped you. It's great, and it gives you a leg up, and you should use that leverage and do as much as you can. But everyone I've seen that is successful, no matter what background, the wisdom and the knowing they have to come to their own.
Mm. Mm. That is powerful. You hear that, quitting switches? That is powerful. All right, I want to keep this going, Dr. Pradeep. So, of course, now in this day, now currently you're involved in business, but of course, along the way, of course, you were studying at various, universities, academia, etc., and of course, you've developed drugs, etc. So there is a doctor side to Pradeep, right? So tell us about this new book, this book that you have. You're the author of 99 Tree and Help Us to improve your gut health. Tell us about how that book came about and what listeners can expect from that.
Yeah, so I wrote that book towards after I quit science, and I came back to London. I said, hey, I need a side project because I couldn't let go of the science fully, right? And the transition. And also, it's very good to have
Mm-hmm.
side project and transition where it allows you, if you're quitting and switching, to still keep some of that old identity and talent in place. And also kind of take it out of
Mm.
the system. So this was a way for me to keep the science going and also to give back to the community. And I asked myself, everyone has problems around the world with their gut and what the food they eat and so forth. Gut health, the microbiome was coming up at that time. So how can I write a book that's, by the way, 99p on Amazon, Kindle free to download, so anyone in the world can afford it. I'm not making no money here. And number two, how simple I can write it, and it's very simply written for anyone to read about gut health, how to promote gut health, healthy eating, what happens in your gut, why is it important. Those are the things that I really concentrate on. That.
Well, I'll definitely be reading that, Dr. Pradeep. I just got my Kindle subscription yesterday, so we'll definitely be looking at that. And for the listeners and quitting switches out there, we'll leave a link to the book so you can have a read. We'll have it in the show notes, www.quittingswitch.co/Pradeep. That's Pradeep. Okay, look, I'm enjoying this conversation so far, but Pradeep, could you tell us a bit more about the business? So, what do you have any plans in the coming future for your business, where you want to take it, and where you see the world with AI as well? Like, are you looking to employ some of these technologies to leverage business opportunities more?
Yeah. So I always say, uh, you will never surpass your wildest dream. So you're going to dream massive because you won't pass your wildest dream, and no one's going to give you dream. By the way, I don't get this, but people, please listen. Dreaming and thinking are free. So when I close my eyes on this earth, I want to leave Donsfield with $1 trillion revenue company. $1 trillion. You heard it here first on Quiz and Switch. $1 trillion revenue company. We want 100 million in the next 1 year, and maybe in 5 years, five
Hmm.
hundred million, and getting up to a billion. And that's through acquisitions and just growing the company. Now, that's the dream. What we're going to do is have smart acquisitions across the world in e-commerce, then have different verticals as well that can join in. We think digital marketing as well, logistics, supply chains, factories, and so forth that can all support the e-commerce. And by the way, if you're a young entrepreneur or thinking big, you need different verticals. And, I done it in pharma, in biotech. I'm doing it now with my own company. You really can't concentrate on one. Once you make money, try to start buying out and build those verticals. That columns have to be developed, because one column goes, another column will come through. And talking about AI, I think it's the future. You can't escape it. It's a bit like when we were young, IT came along, computers came along, AI is the next thing. How you utilize it very uniquely, I think, is good for marketing. It's not just good for giving you answers. I think you got to utilize it in a way that it saves time, efficiency. And I'm sorry to say, it will cut some work out. It will make things redundant. It will save you money as a director or a company CEO on staff. And others just have to relearn and retrain. And if your staff are talented, you've got to deploy them somewhere else.
Mm. Yeah. I mean, this is the pros and cons of AI. Pros is that it's going to give us more leverage, it's going to increase productivity, efficiency. But the cons is, unfortunately, some people are going to lose their jobs. So they need to get smart and they need to understand how they can leverage this AI. Otherwise, they may get left behind. But I'm excited for Donsfield. I'm excited for you, Dr. Pradeep, to see where you're going to take the business using technology such as AI. And I think going back to what you said earlier on, that 300 million that you're asking for earlier on is now going to be looking like a small child's play, in the coming year or so, when you be making the hundreds of millions and even the trillions as well in the years to come.
Yeah.
I'm
And
really, really
also,
excited.
if there's someone ambitious, young or old, or a kid watching, if you're not from a background, or if you don't see a trillion or a billion or a million, expose yourself to those people or those environments, or just write on the piece of paper. I sometimes go to schools. I say, how much is a trillion? How much is a million? How much is a billion? Some kids don't know how many zeros it takes. I'm like, look into your pockets. That's worth £1, right? By the way, this is what I did sometimes. Sometimes I got overwhelmed when I saw these numbers. I said, hey, I used to have £1 in Northwest London. It just is a couple of more zeros at the end of it. That's all it is. A couple of more zeros. And if you understand that and put yourself in those environments with the right people, you get confidence, and you build that confidence saying, hey, I can do this. I can do this. And bring it on. Bring it all on.
I love that. So think about how you can add more zeros to that £1. Stretch that
Exactly.
money.
Stretch it.
This has been brilliant so far. Dr. Pradeep, what advice would you give to those who want to take a similar career business transition as yourself, going from working in pharma, working in biotech, science, etc., to going into business? What advice would you give apart from facing and confronting failure, which we've obviously discussed quite a number of times on this
Yeah,
podcast?
be smart about certain things. And I tell you what, you can, by the way, you don't have to be a farmer. You can be anywhere, start a business. Understand who's near you and where the entry point is. E-commerce, there's a low entry point because anyone can, buy a product, brand it, and go forward. But then after a while, there's in any field, there's sophistication occurs. There's processes that you need to know. There's a network you need to form. There's people you need to meet. So those are the things you need. And also, don't go off saying, hey, first of all, it's about making cash flow. People say cash is king. I said, if cash is king, cash flow is God. And that's my God. You can say what you want, right? Cash flow is very important. Cash flow has to come to the bank. So before you rent an office, before you start paying people, try to hustle and try to sell those products or sell that service and get cash flow coming in. And then you have an example to show to the banks, any investors, and then you have a kind of a cash flow to actually leverage off. and that's very important to do so, right? And second thing is use your networks, your family, your friends. I didn't have much, so I had to go. By the way, Eventbrite, London, again, Oxford, PhD, Harvard didn't mean jack, right? It didn't mean nothing. I had to go and I had to meet everyone from Eventbrite every day. I was shaking hands at every networking event in London, and some of these are free, by the way. I've done so. Make sure you go and meet your bank
Mm.
person, your lawyer, your accountant. All those are needed as well. Network and get into as many uncomfortable rooms as you can and keep going. And with the business plan, I face a problem. I tell you a story in China.
Mm.
I when I had money,
Okay.
Adrian, I said, hey, I have some money now. I want to go and get the best consulting firms. I paid these guys, one of the top three. They came back with blue graph,
Mhm.
green graph, circle graph, pie chart, this chart. I'm like, what the hell is this? I'm like, tell me, is this a good acquisition? Yes or no? Because even I know what's this. Oh, this is what we paid for. I'm like, yeah, this is the same system I'm paying. I'm saying, and I went to my team in China. I go, from now on, we don't use any consultant. We do everything in house. They said, what's the strategy? What's the plan? I said, we're going with the philosopher. His name is Mike Tyson. He said, everyone has a plan, a strategy until I hit them in the face. And life and business is going to hit you in the face, right? So don't rely too much on the plan and strategy. Have one, of course, but make sure it will always flow like this. It still is for me, by the way. And I'm going to be very honest in this podcast. Ambiguity. Like sometimes I wake up, I have no idea what's going on. I have a bigger vision and plan, and you just have to keep going. And it's particularly hard in the first stages. So if you stick to your plan, but also have a good network, know what you're going for, do that, and also play to your strengths, not your weaknesses. Right? People say, "Hey, I have a passion." Passion is sometimes dies out. Right? It's like love or sex. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. Right? But if you have a strength, if you can do maths or something, cook well or play hockey well or whatever, right? And you have a strength, play to those because there's not too
Mm.
much you can do with your weaknesses and play to those strengths and market those strengths or buy a product or service from that strength. So that's what works very well.
Wow, this is massive value you're giving, Dr. Pradeep. Massive value for our quitters and switchers listening out there. These are fantastic tips. These tips alone is worth paying for, honestly. Like these will change your life, honestly, because I've been through some of these tips as a fellow Northwest Londoner. I've been through some of these tips as well. So I can't thank you enough for sharing this massive value, Pradeep. But before we wrap up the show, Dr. Pradeep, I have a new segment here on Quit and Switch called Quit Playing Small. And you're
Oh,
not playing small at all. You're playing big. You're on a big league now, right? Now, this is my question to you, right? So, if time, resources, and money was no object for you, what industry and business would you launch and why?
oh, that's a great question. Um, I'll stick to my expertise at the moment in e-commerce because the
Mhm.
foundation is already laid. So I can scale up
Mm.
and go to 100 from zero very quickly. Then I'll go into biotech, not because
Mm.
it's my it's my kind of training and so forth, because everyone will have a disease at some point, and everyone's going to pay money to live and healthy, right? That's very important. So sustainability, AI, and all that. Yeah, eventually green grasses will go. AI will be a normal thing, but health care,
Mm.
because particularly because we're living longer, and anywhere in the world, everyone faces health problems. So it's a big industry to go into, and that means you don't need a science
It's
background.
mm.
That's like saying, hey, I work out. Let's make this supplement. Hey, I like beauty and skin. Let's make this skin supplement or this cream. Those are things that anyone can do. Hey, I have a problem when I weightlift. My AirPods come out. Let's make a new AirPod so people can have healthier living. All that thing, all those things. All those things. I'm giving ideas for free. I'm gonna start charging now.
No, you're definitely good at generating ideas, and I think I heard it from somewhere that every day, have a pen or pad or your phone and just generate lots of ideas to keep in your phone. You never know when it could be useful. But those are great ideas. And what I can take from this, Pradeep, and what our quitters and switchers can take from this is that don't focus on nice to haves. Focus on solving a problem and focus on providing a product or service that everybody needs. It goes back to that quote, right? I can't remember who did the quote. I don't know if it was Churchill or someone that said, everybody needs a place to eat, a place to sleep, and a place to drink, or whatever it is. So if you can
Yeah,
focus on the essentials, you're always going to be in business. And that's what I take from
absolutely.
what you just shared.
Absolutely, and
Yeah.
make sure you come from a foundation of where you can actually use your expertise quickly and you network quickly. The only reason why e-commerce is because I was there with the Chinese manufacturers and I could learn quickly of them. By the way, I lost loved ones and family members because they said, "Hey, you got to come back from China. People are dying." I lost a lot of friends throughout that process in those years, and I cut them off, right? Because I knew that I had to stay back in China at that particular point. Oh, I knew that I need to get away from the gangs to get into education. So I had to be in that area, in that space, and that gave me the idea. So even if you can't access certain things, make sure you're using the surroundings and your people to accelerate those ideas. And cut the wastes out.
This
Cut the
is
wastes out.
powerful. Mm. Whoa, a lot of value on this episode for sure, Dr. Pradeep. I think listeners are really going to want to listen to this again and take notes. Or they can head over to our show notes, quitandswitch.co/Pradeep. That's Pradeep. And you get all the nuggets, the transcripts, the links and references from today's show. But before we let you go, Dr. Pradeep, you need to let the listeners know where they can connect with you, where they can learn more about your business, and if you have any final thoughts you want to live, any final thoughts or announcements you want to leave our listeners with, take it away.
Yeah, so you can connect me on my very long name, Pradeep Kumar Sacitharan on LinkedIn. On my Twitter, Instagram, all my social media handles are PK Sacitharan. So PK Sacitharan. And I'm here to help and serve. I'm always here. I might be a bit slow now, but I'm busier. But anyone that reaches out, I try to email back or get the team to remind me always. I genuinely love to help people because as I said, there's so many Einsteins and Newtons and world beaters there. Who am I? If I can empower someone or inspire someone, I'm here. But final thoughts. Life, I got many quotes, but my favorite quote is that I say life is a sales game. You got to sell yourself. It's a risk game. You got to take the biggest risk. And life is a numbers game. You have to do your numbers and keep rejecting and keep the failures going.
This guy. I mean, we could have made an album out of all of your quotes and
Hey,
your nuggets.
my
I
my
think you
my
would have
my
put Kanye West college dropout to shame.
no, I'm aiming for Tupac changes.
I love that. I love that. I love that. Hey, let's give him a clap for that. I love that. I love that. I love that. All right. So, Dr. Pradeep, thank you so much. Thank you so much. We'll have all of the links on in the podcast description box. You guys can head over once again, quitandswitch.co/Pradeep. That's Pradeep. You've given us our final thoughts. Until next time, guys, quitters never really quit. They switch. See you in the next episode. Thank you very much.